This Christmas, Brian visits his cousin Rachel's new farmhouse, hoping for a cozy holiday with family. But as the warmth of the season fades, he finds himself drawn into the basement, uncovering an old mirror that seems to hold more than just reflections. What begins as a simple curiosity spirals into a night filled with unsettling whispers, a suffocating silence, and a chilling discovery that leaves him questioning reality. Will Brian's instincts save him, or has he awakened something better left untouched? It was the kind of invitation you couldn't turn down. "Brian, we're hosting Christmas at the farmhouse," Rachel had said on the phone weeks before. "You got to come. It's our first holiday here." I hadn't seen Rachel or her kids in years, and the thought of a cozy Christmas surrounded by family sounded like the perfect escape from my routine. The farmhouse was an old, sprawling structure just outside Denver, tucked away at the end of a long, gravel road. Rachel and her husband, Mark, had bought it a few months earlier, lured by the charm of its wide porches and old-world character. "It's a bit of a fixer-upper," Rachel admitted when I arrived, "but we love it." Walking inside, I felt the weight of the place immediately. The ceilings were high, the wooden floors creaked underfoot, and the air was heavy, like it hadn't been disturbed in years. Yet, Rachel had done her best to fill it with warmth. String lights draped along the walls, a crackling fireplace, and the aroma of spiced cider wafting through the air. The kids ran around with their usual holiday excitement, their laughter bouncing off the walls. Yet beneath the cheer, there was something else, a strange, almost imperceptible stillness. Dinner was a lively affair, Mark carving the turkey while Rachel kept the kids from stealing bites too early. Between bites of mashed potatoes and cranberry sauce, Rachel brought up the basement. "It's like a time capsule down there," she said with a chuckle. "Old furniture, crates of newspapers, and the weirdest cracked mirror. Gives me the creeps." "A cracked mirror?" I asked. "Yeah, it's huge. Probably left by the previous owners. It's been down there forever, judging by the dust. You should see it, Brian. Feels like something out of a Hitchcock movie." Everyone laughed, but the mention of the mirror stuck with me. After dinner, as the kids went off to play with their new toys, I found myself heading toward the basement door. Descending into the basement, I was greeted by a blast of cold air that prickled my skin, making me pull my sweater tighter around myself. The wooden stairs groaned under my weight, their protests echoing in the enclosed space. I could smell the faint aroma of damp earth and something else, a metallic tang that I couldn't quite place. Each step seemed louder than the last, as though the silence itself was amplifying the sound, urging me to turn back. But curiosity, as always, pushed me forward. The basement wasn't particularly large, but it was packed with the remnants of another era. A rusted bicycle leaned precariously against a stack of crates. Old tools hung from the walls, their edges dulled by years of neglect. Dust motes swirled in the dim light of a single bulb, which flickered sporadically, casting jittery shadows that seemed alive. And then I saw it, the mirror. It stood propped against the far wall, partially obscured by an old, tattered sheet. Even from a distance, its presence felt significant, almost imposing, like it didn't belong with the rest of the forgotten junk. My breath fogged in the chilly air as I approached, each step feeling heavier than the last. The sheet was coarse under my fingers as I grabbed it, hesitating for a moment before pulling it away. Dust erupted in a small cloud, catching the weak light. The mirror was enormous, its ornate wooden frame carved with intricate designs that hinted at a time when craftsmanship was an art form. But it wasn't the frame that held my attention, it was the glass. The crack. It ran diagonally from the top right corner to the bottom left, splitting the reflection into uneven, distorted segments. I could see myself in the mirror, but the image was fragmented, almost surreal. My eyes moved across the surface, drawn to the imperfection, the jagged line that marred its once pristine clarity. I raised my hand instinctively, waving at my reflection. It waved back, perfectly in sync. I leaned closer, studying the way the crack warped my face into an unfamiliar mosaic. But then, just for a moment, something felt off. My reflection's hand seemed to pause mid-air, a fraction of a second behind my movement. I blinked hard, convincing myself it was a trick of the light or my imagination playing games. When I looked again, everything seemed normal. "It's just an old mirror," I muttered aloud, my voice sounding hollow in the empty space. But even as I said it, I couldn't shake the unease coiling in my chest. There was something about the mirror that felt wrong, like it was watching me just as much as I was watching it. I draped the sheet back over it, the fabric settling with an almost reluctant finality. Turning on my heel, I hurried up the stairs, my footsteps echoing like a countdown. By the time I reached the door, my heart was pounding, though I couldn't quite explain why. That night, the farmhouse was deathly silent. Not the peaceful kind of silence, but the kind that feels unnatural, like the world is holding its breath. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to the faint creaks of the house settling. The wind outside was relentless, rattling the windows and whistling through the gaps in the old wood. Yet, inside, everything felt still. I couldn't stop thinking about the mirror. Its fractured surface, the way it seemed to warp reality, lingered in my mind. I told myself it was nothing, just an old relic left behind by the previous owners. But logic didn't seem to soothe the unease that had taken root deep in my gut. A sudden creak broke the stillness, snapping me out of my thoughts. I bolted upright, my heart hammering. The sound had come from the hallway. "It's just the house," I whispered to myself, though the words felt hollow. Swinging my legs over the side of the bed, I grabbed my phone for light and padded toward the door. The air in the hallway was colder than my room, and I hugged myself against the chill as I stepped out. The moonlight streaming through the windows cast long, eerie shadows across the floor. The farmhouse's narrow hallways felt like they stretched on forever, each step amplifying the oppressive quiet. As I made my way toward the kitchen for a glass of water, I could have sworn I heard whispers, soft and indistinct, like a conversation just out of earshot. "Hello." My voice cracked as I called out, the sound startling in the otherwise silent house. There was no response, just the faint hum of the wind outside. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the paranoia creeping in. Reaching the kitchen, I filled a glass with water and took a long sip, letting the cold liquid calm my nerves. Setting the glass down, I caught sight of my reflection in the darkened window above the sink. My face stared back, pale and wide-eyed. For a moment, I thought I saw something move behind me, a flicker of motion that made my breath catch. Spinning around, I found nothing but the empty kitchen. My heart raced, my mind grasping for a rational explanation. It was the shadows, I told myself. The shadows playing tricks. Returning to my room, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. As I lay back down, pulling the covers up to my chin, the whispers seemed to follow me, just faint enough to make me doubt I'd heard them at all. Sleep didn't come easily that night, and when it did, it was restless, haunted by dreams I couldn't remember, but left me waking with a start, heart pounding and drenched in sweat. By morning, the festive atmosphere had dulled. Rachel was unusually quiet as she prepared breakfast, and Mark kept glancing over his shoulder as if expecting to see someone. The kids, usually full of energy, sat at the table, eating their cereal in silence. "What's with everyone?" I asked, trying to lighten the mood. Rachel exchanged a glance with Mark, but said nothing. The tension was palpable, thick enough to cut with a knife. After breakfast, I stepped outside to clear my head. The sun was just beginning to rise, casting a pale light over the snow-covered fields. The air was sharp and cold, biting at my skin. I stood by the frosted window, staring at the horizon. Something caught my eye, my reflection in the glass. Only it wasn't quite right. I wasn't smiling, but the reflection was.